be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Aman. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, Kofi, ça va? Ni hao, namaste, osayana kituya, Ohio. I see you, Manut, Wagwan, Kamsa, Aloha, Ciao, Ensemble, Akwaba, Madase, Itase, Jambo, Mimini Kofi, in the Frako Katana, the Wewe, Boker To, Boker Tav, Grand Rising, greetings, Shabbat Shalom. Anai Kovai, Chelit, and servants of Christ, Mashalom. Hey, hello everybody, I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, by being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. We appreciate your presence today. Thank you for being on with us. We hope that all is well with thee and thine house. It is Shabbat, it is Saturday, so we're going to jump right in. We don't have as long, and we got to get ready for the podcast. Also, too, basically, as of last night in this rising, pretty much have come to find out that we got some family stuff that we must take care of. So we're gonna jump on the road. I've been sitting up here packing up this rising, so we're gonna be on the road probably through the weekend. So y'all keep us in prayer. We should have everything on track except for two things today. We will more than likely, well, we will not be able to have our watch party today because I'll be on the road during that time and won't be able to have a place to sit where we can spend an hour 15 going through the end. So we'll do that next week. We'll try to end the watch party next week for that we've been doing for Joseph, King of Dreams. And we more than likely, I will send a message out to you guys in England. More than likely, I will not have signal because we'll be up in the mountains around that time that we're supposed to be having you guys stuff scheduled. Other than that, we should be able to do the men's meeting prayerfully. That should go on without a hitch, and all that should be fine. So we should be able to still do our men's meeting and everything that's a schedule, Shabbat school for the children, and the podcast right after this. Everything should be fine with those. So just in case you were thinking that maybe one of those might get canceled or might get moved and we might miss that, we actually should have all of those go on fine with no problem. And Tada, thank you for your patience with that. But thank you everybody for being on. We appreciate you. So Shabbat Shalom. Once again, Shabbat on the Israelite calendar and the Gregorian calendar right now are hitting the same days. So thank you for being on. Those of you that are in Texas, we're working out an address. More than likely will be in Houston. Just to give everybody a heads up, if you need to be ready to travel that day, some hours from the Houston, Dallas, Petworth. Did I say Petworth? Dallas, whatever the other. I'm sorry, Houston, Dallas, Fort something area. Petworth is over here on in the East Coast, and those even who might come from Grand Prairie. So we'll try to get you that information for an address, but we're going to be there September like 21st to the 23rd or something like that, and we have Feast of Trumpets, which is on which is on September 22nd. I believe the 19th is a Saturday, and so the 12th, which should be a Saturday, whatever that Saturday is closest to September the 12th, we're going to try and see about doing the meetup, probably in the Baltimore area. So if you're close enough to the Baltimore area and you'd like to come by and say hey and check us out and be part of the 4 hours of power experience and all that, we're going to move it till it's earlier in the day. And it'll probably be whatever Saturday is closest to that September 12th, whatever that is. We'll work out something in the Baltimore area and make sure everybody can come through and fellowship and rejoice. Probably be outside somewhere too. So we'll make it to where you guys, if you have an awning, stuff like that, make sure you prepare for a little bit of cold. If you'd like to be able to meet up with us, if you're in the DC area, if you're in Maryland, if you're in Virginia, if you're in Pennsylvania even, and you want to try to come by, those of you up in the Northeast may not be able to make it down, but if you'd like to just kind of hold those dates, those are the closest dates coming outside of October 1st, which will be in Georgia, Day of Atonement. October 6th to the 13th will be the Feast of Tabernacles. And then I'm going to take a little vacay while we continue to do what we're supposed to do with the ministerial staff. Amen. But Tada, my Shabbat Shalom. Real quick, I'm going to go and grab something that I need for my voice real quick. But before I do that, mic check 1, 2. Can everybody hear me, see me? Yes, no, maybe so. Even if the numbers are suppressed to get started or whatever, they'll pick up. Praise Yah. And thank you if you'd like to share, the video with others too, as well as share, hit the notification tab, and on the different platforms. Can you guys see and hear? Okay, cool. So give me prayerfully like a minute. Depends on it. If the drink I need is where I think it's supposed to be. Give me about a minute. I'll be right back in front of you all. And I already got everything else set out here. I got my bug spray that my wife made and everything. So I got everything I need out here. Just give me about a minute. We'll be back. When I come back, I'll say shalom and peace to everybody on the platforms. We'll jump right in. We'll try to be finished today about 9:30, somewhere between 9:30 to 9:45. As I said, we got kind of a surprise. Got to get on the road, so I got to pack the vehicle and be in the vehicle in time to start the podcast. So prayerfully, everybody will be able to join us. But just give me a second. Thank you so much for being on again. We very much so appreciate you. Give me a second, but we shall greet everybody properly, and then we'll get started. All right. Allah alaikum. All right. All right, awesome, awesome. So I have returned. Also too, to let it be known. Wow, I'm sitting here barefoot. I got glass all over here. I didn't know that. There's broken glass over here. Wow, thank you, yeah. All right. That being said, too, just wanted to let you guys know that praise Yah. We are. I showed a video already where we have stuff for the children. I'm going to ask for some of you guys' help. At some point, we might do something nice that I'm trying to change my habits. As many of you know, I like carbonated stuff. And unfortunately, that means that I'm also hooked on sugar and soda, unfortunately. I say I don't have a sweet tooth, but then I have a whole bunch of soda and stuff. So I'm trying to actually take the bull by the horn, so to speak. I'll have a video up showing you guys I'm getting more into fermenting, making my own sodas, basically. So not making wine, even though if you keep fermenting, it turns into wine. But, making my own soda. So we basically are doing some simple stuff. And we might even, at some point, if people want to give donations for it, we might even look at it. We're doing some ones that don't cost that much because there are different costs for different types of fermented drinks that are made sodas, because it depends on how much you have to gather, right? So I did some simple stuff. We have like some spruce and some pine on the property and stuff like, or in the land and stuff. So I was able to take some spruce and some pine and put those. Okay, supposedly TikTok goes away September 2025. Okay, I haven't heard about that. Okay, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I didn't know. So, okay, you guys might need to look for us on other platforms. Remember, we have other platforms that are up. We could obviously use Facebook. We can obviously use. I'm sorry. Well, I don't know. We might get in trouble. We can use the one I just mentioned. We have the one that starts with a Y that's been around for a long, long time that persons are on. Supposedly all this stuff is going on. Just like supposedly they were going to take it away last time. I haven't even been paying attention, so maybe it is. We have obviously the podcast. We have different places. So we're not gonna. If you guys are with us and things like that, sincere, etc. We've had to start over before plenty of times, not just on this platform, but many platforms before. So we'll make it work. But prayerfully, you guys, that's why we always say hashtag find Kofi. Look at us, different places. Literally, one channel that we have, right, on another platform is literally named hashtag find Kofi as well. So it's not just a hashtag. You just look us up and you'll be able to find us, all right? We're not that hard to find, especially for those who've been with us for a while. But I did not know that. That's the first time hearing of that. So if anybody has any information or whatever about that, feel free. Like if somebody can maybe text me some stuff about it, let me know. I've never, they're always saying, and I think I've heard recently, persons arguing and complaining about who's going to own it because they want America to own a certain percentage and stuff like that. And the government's trying to put their hands in. The government has like a law or rule now to where they're saying that they want to be able, if they think that something's not doing well enough, they want to be able to say that they can control 10% of it or whatever, to get it right and all that stuff. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on. So just be ready if it is there. I'm sorry, today's not Q&A. I apologize. You said, why was the Book of Enoch not included in the original Constantine Bible? Well, forget the original Constantine Bible. People do the weird Constantine thing, forgetting that before Constantine's father was fighting already and is trying to put a lot of stuff into Christianity, especially now Christianity not even being the same as what the Bible is. Remember that it's more of a pagan thing. Those who call themselves Christians are actually pagan. So, so just be aware. Just be aware, that even when we use the Constantine thing, I call it low-hanging fruit, but it's really not even necessarily correct. If you want to talk about Christianity, you have to talk about even persons don't know Constantine's father is fighting when there's Rome is split in war, right? And they're already fighting to see who's going to be the emperor. Constantine wins, and when he wins, he continues with some of the will of his father, but also he supposedly had this vision about the SPQR thing with the Tav, or what we call the cross, etc. All these different things. So. But as far as just the Book of Enoch, period, all the scrolls, when you're talking about, not just Enoch, but even you have to ask yourself, what about the KJV, or what about the, not 1611, but what about going back to 1590 or 1560, or what about the Byzantine Empire, what about Eastern Rome versus Western Rome? So it's a more convoluted question than just, hey, everything starts and begins and ends with Constantine. Constantine himself, even if he was nefarious, actually wasn't even really on the board. He just kind of said, I want these couple of things to be done, but also he was trying to learn about what they were teaching him Christianity was, and he kind of wasn't always in the room. If we're going to use the same, right, if we're going to use the standard of the things that we're finding that persons are reading, we should read also too that part of it as well. So Christianity is more of a pagan thing that was already starting to take a hold. They didn't care about the followers of the way, or the Israelites, or those who would be grafted into Israel, etc. However, over time, it became something that, when Romans who were pagans, who looked like them, were putting their spin and mixing iron and clay, right? Like it says in Daniel chapter 2, they were mixing Rome with the word, romantic values with the word, right? Zeus becomes their god, so to speak, right? Becomes their number one, and the sun becomes, right, their soli victus, right? That becomes Christ, and Madonna and child now become Madonna, Mary, and Christ child. They changed up the game, right? So there's a lot of stuff that was already happening. Constantine basically just makes it to where, okay, it's become so popular and persons are willing to lose their life, and it's kind of hard to watch Roman families. Roman families are getting upset with watching Roman families starting to get offed because of their belief system. So Constantine is a piece of the equation, sure, and something to help us to prove, yeah, they changed stuff up, but stuff was already being changed, and ultimately, why? And then this is not Q&A today, so I'm going to get into what we're supposed to talk about for today. So I'm just going to end on this. Why? To answer your question kind of matter-of-factly, well, what the same reason they changed everything else? Whatever gives power to the Senate, right? Whatever gives power to the emperor. Remember, emperor or imperare or emperor literally is a word that means master. So that's what the slaves call their master, right? In their culture, their masters, the slave master, what you referred to him as, was emperor. So everybody under him was a slave master. So if it benefited him, but he also knew he had to make sure the lords that were underneath him, the Senate, right, including some of their titles, were father, right? That's where you get the term father from for the priests and stuff. It actually came from Rome, romantic values. All of those families that were in charge and taking care of things, they had to be given power, and structure, and be able to lead. If you could do that, right, and the poor would fall in line easily, with the democratic republic that they had, thinking that they were involved when they really technically had no vote of any type of power. You use all that together, you get where you're going. So anyways, let's say shalom to everybody. Peace. Let's jump in for today. Not Q&A day today. We did Q&A yesterday and Friday, so we'll have another Q&A Thursday, Friday in two weeks, right? So, but thank you again. Once again, today's not Q&A. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't have answered that one question because now we open the floodgates. Today's not Q&A, so we'll go ahead and get into today. I'll see if I can answer some of the questions as they go with what we're called to or led for today. But how you doing, Brother TJ, Elder Nice, Minister Tracy, uh, the Anime God, is it? Uh, DL. Um, oh yeah, well yeah, we don't worship man. How you doing, Sister KC, Sister Deborah, Lamont? Thank y'all for the love, likes, shares, hitting the notification tab if you subscribe, etc. Thank you so much for being on all the different platforms. We appreciate you. How you doing, Brother Alton? Let's see, is it Black Rod to ask the question? Big Brother Charles, Bold Servant. Where's the podcast? The podcast is called The Kofi Ofori Podcast. You can watch it on several different platforms, including even places where we recorded and posted in other areas. But also, too, you can just simply go to the podcast source itself if you want to join us live. You have to have the Podbean app, Podbean, Podbean. Um, like a pod, like a pea pod, and then bean, like a bean burrito. I don't know, Podbean app, and look for my name, The Kofi Ofori Podcast. That's what it's called. It'll start at 10 a.m. New York time. If you make it to the end of the live session today with us, when we close out, I'll make sure that I put it up on the screen for you if you're on this platform over here. All right, if you're on this platform over here, we'll make sure that we do that for you. All righty. But welcome. How you doing? My wife is on the Audible. As always, check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. How you doing, Yaknan? How you doing? Thanks for being on with us. Crafty Sensei, thanks for being part of the community. Is it Listra? Adu? Not, I don't know how to say this. Natal? Dennis Nadel, not sure if I'm saying that right. Michael, Desmond Sandy, Candy Rich Tick, NY Boston _2, Andrew Heaven, Tanya, Miracle, A flat major third, or A flat major 3, or A flat major third. Not A flat major third is not really a chord, so I'm not sure what it is. So forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. How you doing, Elizabeth K? You said your teacher in grade school taught choir class the Shalom, Kavaram, the greeting song. Okay, cool. Welcome to everybody. How you doing, Nathalie Dennis, everybody? We appreciate you so very much. Shalom, peace, family. Thank you for being on once again. We're gonna get ready to say our Bible pledge to jump right in for what we're led to talk about today. Forgive me, I'm spraying myself. I'm outside. My wife, who's a herbalist, makes a whole bunch of great things, including bug spray. So I'm making sure that I am ready to go. Last night, as I was coming back, they were tearing me up. And once again, I apologize. We're gonna try and finish this up by somewhere between 9:30 and 9:45. 9:45 meaning music and everything, shout out and everything will be done at least by then at the latest, because we just found out that we got to go out of town. So been packing, getting stuff together. As soon as we finish, I got to pack everything up so that come time to start the podcast, I can be ready to start it inside the vehicle, and y'all can listen to us on the road, traveling on the road. All righty. And once again, Shabbat school for the babies is on. Everything else tonight, everything else, the meetup in England won't happen today. The watch party has to be moved to next weekend because we'll be in the mountains, so I won't be able to see or get signal or anything for a while. But we should be able to have our men's meeting tonight at 7 p.m. New York time. So that should still be on, brothers. All right. So hopefully we'll see you for that. All righty. All right. Let's go ahead and say our Bible pledge. You can just put your right hand on your device or your Bible in the air. Just repeat after me. You said how many virgins and stuff like that? What are you talking about? Do you think I'm a Muslim? Or you think somebody, we're talking about the Bible. The Bible existed before Christianity and Muslims and all this, right? Or what we could now call Muslim, what we now call Christians, or we now call all these different titles that weren't even in existence back then, right? So if you actually want to learn something that we learn through the prism we're going through, feel free to actually listen to what we're talking about today. All righty, let's go ahead, right? All right, you can repeat after me. This is my Bible, this is my sword, and this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible, and this is Yah's word. Hashem Yechavach. Amen. Hashem, his name is authority. Let it be done unto us. You may be seated or go back to what you're doing in the presence of Yah. So Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Peace be upon you. Hopefully you're enjoying your day. Shabbat Shalom matches both calendars right now. So Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Lidar and everybody. How you doing, Brother Alton? How you doing, Royalty? Everybody for being on. All right, so here we go. So, and we praise Yah for all of you. So here we go. Yeah, okay. Yeah, DL's on some stuff. If DL wants to stick around and learn, he can, but I'm not tripping off that or whatever. You're so proud to be an American that you don't realize that that's not even what we're talking about, right? You have such chauvinism, which that's what it is. That's what chauvinism is. Male chauvinism, something different. Chauvinism is when somebody can be so beat up by something in the system and care about it so much that they don't realize what they're looking like out here, right? To the point to where, watch this, I'm a veteran. Now, that might not matter to you, but I'm a veteran, right? So I served, had bullets fly past, trained others, still will support and defend the Constitution, not the foolishness that you guys go by, but the actual Constitution against all enemies that are both foreign and domestic, right? The ones that live here as well or live in the United States Corporation. So I'm a veteran. So I put my time in. And when I speak on stuff, I have persons who have probably never served, even when they say that they have, talking ridiculous stuff. So, you know, that's what I say. Somebody can be so wrapped up in something and look at somebody and see my locks, or hear somebody say something, or see somebody say something, wear the garb and be like, oh, you're Muslim, or blah, blah, and not even realize that, you know, according to your standard, it's not mine, according to your standard, if it wasn't for a person such as myself, you wouldn't have the freedom to be able to say all the foolishness you're saying. Right? That's why we have to make sure, you know, that we can't just look through these weird prisms or these weird lenses, which is why today we're actually talking about somebody that you might not think goes with what we just said, but his name is, the person we're talking about today, his name is Gandhi. Gandhi. Right? Gandhiji, Mahatma Gandhi. Right? We're going to talk about Gandhi today. Somebody says on Shabbat. Talking about word, talking about freedom, talking about being who Yah wants us to be. How does Gandhi teach us anything? Well, Gandhi is an interesting case study because Gandhi actually is going to show you a lot. Gandhi is token. Gandhi is an Indian person and a Pakistani person would not like me to tell you this, but Gandhi, being Indian, would therefore be African, even though he hated Africans. Gandhi was an Indian who lived in South Africa and spoke so negatively of us that he helped to make sure that it was okay. He printed out publications, right, to make sure that it was okay for us to be strewn about, to be hung, to be dragged out of our homes, for our women to be, and all that stuff, right? But many of you, just like what happens with a lot of persons that exist today, things have been so washed that we don't even consider Gandhi as anything other. Many persons probably started off with their Gandhi experience very similar to mine. Right? How you doing, Sister Mignon? And thank y'all for the love. Thank you, babe. So for a lot of persons, you might not think of it, or you might not know where we're going. How you doing, Money Green or Lulu? Some of you already know where we're going. How you doing, Brother Bradley? But when we talk about Gandhi himself, hear me, beloved. When we talk about Gandhi himself is one of these persons that we have to talk about, because when we say we don't see color, or we go white persons only, or negative and blah blah, we have to realize that many of us were washed as far as who Gandhi is, right? So Gandhi or Gandhi, whether you spell it, I usually spell it G-H-A-N-D-I, but apparently now more persons spell it G-A-N-D-H-I. So out of respect, you know, but however you're spelling the name, we know, hopefully you know who we're speaking on. And Gandhi, right, is somebody who is looked at as a hero. Now, my experience with Gandhi, although I had known the name, or I was aware of the name, my experience with Gandhi as a young child starts with a movie. I don't recall if the movie is named Gandhi or whatever, right? You fell for the narrative too, yeah. So I don't recall if it's named Gandhi or whatever, but it was the movie that Ben Kingsley played Gandhi in. And we had a double VHS set. I don't remember when the movie was made. It could have been made in the 70s. Feels like it could have been made in the late 70s, early 80s. Could have been the mid 80s, late 80s. I don't know. Somewhere around then, I really didn't start watching it, I'd say, until at least the mid 90s and on, right? Had the double VHS. Y'all know about the VHS. Some of y'all like VHS, right? Depending on your age, right? But those of us who know about that VHS life, especially the double VHS life, when they had the long movie, and you would go in there and you'd be watching the movie, and then it would just shut off, and then you'd have to know, oh, put the other VHS in, or it would tell you this is the end of part one, and then you got to put in part two, right? Uh, and maybe fast forward, past all those commercials. Hopefully, you had a fast forward that wasn't just only went twice as fast. If not, then it took you a long time, but you fast forward the commercials, all that stuff. But anyways, I was introduced to Gandhi through that. That was my introduction to Gandhi, VHS. And I'm very, very much so wired in a manner that if I do something, I just keep doing it. So I have to be careful. I have a very, what they would call, addictive personality. If I find something works for me, or I'm getting something out of something, I'll just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. So I would watch movies over and over and over again. I've watched, especially when it was VHS, and I was, junior high to high school. I would fall asleep on the floor every night, and even though I wasn't supposed to be out there, I would wait till my father came home. He always came home late from his last gig, and he would go in, and once he fell asleep, I would always sneak out. They got tired of telling me to get up, so I would just always sneak out, and I would be out in the living room on the floor watching. We had one of those huge projector screens. We had like a 55-inch projector screen, and then we had one of them big, huge, heavy, bulky screens that had the red, yellow, and green light on it that projected, right? And we had that until like the early 2000s. I came back from the military, it was gone. I was surprised. But that was the TV that I knew for pretty much my whole life that I can remember that we had. Anyways, and so I would watch all these movies over and over and over and over and over again. And one of the movies that I watched was, in fact, Gandhi, or whatever the name of the movie is, the one with Ben Kingsley, where I didn't realize at the time, being young, being dumb, whatever, didn't realize that basically it was a white man in blackface, or we'll try to call it brown face, because some persons don't want to admit that Indians, right, Pakistani people, by the way, they definitely don't want to hear this, but Pakistani persons and Indian persons are both the same persons. They're both the same people. Now, that is oversimplification, right? Because obviously there are many nations, just like it's almost like saying all persons in Africa are the same, right? But I'm saying as far as India, as far as the corporation or the territory, or really the, if we'll call it like it is, the, America calls them territories. They actually are just colonies. And the colony of India, right, used to include Pakistan. That's why Pakistan, if you look on the map, is on both sides of India. You're like, how is that split? They all used to be the same thing. The Pakistani side is really the Muslim side. The Indian side is when they went back to what Europeans call Hindu, and they went back to a lot of Christianity being mixed in there. Okay, but Pakistan used to be part of India. So if you meet a Pakistani, I'm just telling you right now, be careful, be respectful. If you go to them and you start talking about this and you know this, they don't want to hear that they're Indian, many of them, even though they are, right? And if you talk to an Indian person, right, they don't really want to hear Pakistanis, right? Because a lot of stuff came, matter of fact, a lot of stuff came out of the fight that Gandhi helped. So while we talk about Pakistan versus India, a lot of persons don't even realize that's part of the fight that Gandhi helped create. So, but I grew up on this movie, and this movie made Gandhi somebody who wanted rights. He wanted rights for all of his people. Then he realized that he needed to start fighting for rights of everybody. He was willing to fast for everybody. And eventually, he was able to change the world. And because of him, not because of anything else, just because of him, his freedom, right? Or I'm sorry, India's freedom was given. But the problem is when you go to India and you talk to an Indian person, or if you talk to an Indian person that you come across, talk to a Pakistani person you come across, a lot of them will tell you the truth, which is that's a little more complicated than that. How you doing, Sister Shima? Right? It's a little more complicated than that. Hey, Wagwan, how you doing? ML16. I'm just being honest. Me no rasta. Yeah, enough for me. So, no offense, no shade. I don't, locked up and everything, but not. I have family that's rasta, right? But I am not Rastafari. I just keeping it a buck with you, being 100% truthful, right? You said, with all due respect, it's the second day that you noticed that I didn't acknowledge every person. You're not offended, just aware. Maybe you're an unseen shadow. Okay. Well, I said hello to you earlier, Sister Michelle. I even said, I even said about DL worshiping the flag that was an abomination. I said that earlier. So I don't know. Maybe something going on with the signal. You know. So maybe so. But I apologize. You know, if I've missed you several days. I said hello to you yesterday. I said hello to you yesterday on the live session last night when we had the live session. Matter of fact, when I noticed that you weren't on the live sessions that we were starting for Malachi, which I had announced, so you probably missed the announcement. I think I reached out to you and let you know that we were doing this stuff. So it's not anything personal, but I'll try to be better. No problem. How you doing, the one and only Wakanda? Thanks for being on. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. How you doing, Carolyn Yates? So, how you doing, Liz? I didn't. Okay, no problem. Well, thank you. I didn't say so. I'm sorry, because the reason why I even started talking about the guy with the whole flag thing and everything and talking about being a veteran was based off of your comments. So maybe I did the comment stuff, but I never mentioned your name, right? But either way, I still had love for you. If you think that I'm doing wrong or lying or doing something like that, hey, hold me accountable. That's what you're doing. We're holding each other accountable. Now we just be better, right? All right. So appreciate you. So, but in all these things that we have going on, right? Last night you weren't on. You weren't on. Okay, maybe it's another Michelle, or maybe there's another Michelle Moss, or something on. I did reach out. Well, you know what? We're doing public stuff or whatever. It's becoming a weird thing. I hope all is well. If I've been doing something that's offensive to you, then maybe we need to talk offline, right? Because I do know I did make sure I reached out to you. I did tell you that the series we started, we're doing Malachi because it's the series that you suggested. It's not like we're above like not making sure we'll go out of our way to see you and check on you and stuff like that. So we're fine, but hopefully all is well. I don't, it's all great. As far as on my end, if I've done something that's offensive, I'll do my best to stop being offensive. Um, but yeah, I apologize. I thought I said shalom to you. I thought I said shalom to you in the live session yesterday. Maybe just the regular live session, the early one. But anyways, I apologize. Um, so it is what it is. But back to the Gandhi thing. So, well, okay, all right. I apologize. Okay, back to the Gandhi situation, right? If we are speaking on what's going on as far as Gandhi, Pakistan, all these different things, whatever, we have to recognize and realize very quickly that Gandhi hits a lot of boxes and he is a microcosm. He is a microcosm of a lot of different things that are happening, right? He is. He's a microcosm of a whole lot of different things that are happening, right? So when we talk about him being a microcosm, what do we mean? We have a so-called, let's just say today, POC, even though Indians, and especially if you check out what's going on, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there as far as what's considered to be what color, what persons, etc., right? But as far as Gandhi, right? As far as Gandhi is concerned, he is a person who we today automatically make okay. And in the movies and in all types of stuff we've been taught, Gandhi was somebody who was for everybody, all these different things. And the reality of the situation is that in all these things we're talking about with Gandhi, the reality of the situation is this, okay? In all the things that we're speaking on, all right? And all the things we're speaking on, the reality of the situation is as follows. All right, you ready? Gandhi didn't care about everybody. Gandhi didn't like a lot of his own people. Gandhi was somebody who was messing with underage children. Gandhi is somebody who would tell you enough about scripture or about Christ, and he would tell you he's more of a Christian than you are, and persons would go, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. A lot of stuff that we have today that still exists, as far as the way we look at so-called religion or religiosity, is an issue, right? And one of the questions that was asked earlier, like I said, I would try to see if I can get to them if they fit in what we're talking about today. And since I did answer somebody else's question, there's a thing of being unfair today. Let me just go ahead and do this real quick. Religion, right? Because that's basically where it comes from, is the word. That's why some of you call it religion, right? Religion. right, is because I and E are interchangeable in vowels, right? But religion really is just calling it a legion that repeats itself. Now, there's persons that would say, well, you got to go to the Li of the word, the Li. Where did that come from? But it wasn't even spelled the way that we spelled it in its origin. That being said, religion really is just when persons repetitively do something over and over again. So that's why you can religiously run, you can religiously drink water, you can religiously, um, you can religiously do a lot of different things. You can religiously study. You can religiously play video games, right? So the term is kind of taking on a whole bunch of different things, but this religious mindset, this new world religion, even that kind of all religions come together, and can all of them are affected, and we clean and wash everything clean as if nothing negative was going on, or if it wasn't still under the same world powers. We have to realize that Gandhi is connected. Some persons might not like me saying this today. It is what it is. Gandhi is connected to what is called racism, white supremacy. Yeah, he is an antichrist type spirit, at least one that's in him, right? So Gandhi is an antichrist spirit dealing with this stuff. Like Gandhi is one to where he is a second beast. Remember we talked about this yesterday. You have you have where we talked about it on Monday as well, right? We have three beasts, right? You have the serpent, Revelation 12, Revelation 13. You have the beast, which is the government that is to be like the serpent and to follow the serpent, and then you have the third beast or the second beast in 13. But if you some of you want to count the serpent, so you have another beast, the last beast that's mentioned in Revelation 12, 13, where it has the horns of a ram, right? But it has the voice of a serpent. It sounds like a serpent. The serpent sounds like the devil, right? So the horns of a ram says, oh, this is Christ's light. And persons get confused because they say we can see some version of so-called the Christ, right? Or Mashiach, Messiah, etc. We see some version of the Messiah, right? We see some version there of the Messiah, right? We see something that has some kind of semblance to the Christ, to the Messiah, to the Anointed One, to our Messiah, to the bit of Aleph bit. We see something there. And how you doing, Elder Tamer? We see something there, right? At the same time, though, you have to pay attention to what's being said, what's coming out of the mouth, right? What is the words that are actually being there? Do they sound like the scroll that we're supposed to eat the whole scroll of Revelation chapter 10? Or does it sound like more of the beast and more of the government? See, Gandhi, if you be honest about his story, Gandhi is one who caused more racism than just about anybody else. Or I can't say, maybe that's unfair. How about this? Gandhi helped to create hatred of each other, but did so with a smile and was accepted by the very oppressors that he wanted to be considered to be equal with. Sounds familiar to some persons we see today, right? See, Gandhi is a microcosm. Gandhi's an OG, right? If Gandhi were around today, some of you might say he sounds a little bit like Ben Shapiro. If Gandhi were around today, you might say that Gandhi seems to be some of, he would sound maybe a lot like what's her face? Candace Owens. Candace Owens will hit you with some scripture and stuff, but if you pay attention long enough, we can see what time it is. Gandhi might remind you even of a pastor, what's his name, Jamal Bryant, right? If you listen to what he says, it sounds like, well, it's acceptance, blah, blah, but look at what he's doing, and look who's paying him, and look what his overall goal is, what his overall goal is as far as achievement. Gandhi's been very romanticized, right? Look at a lot of persons who are busy telling us that they're into the word. Look at a lot of so-called followers of the way, that if we pay attention, basically are just simply saying the same thing and doing the same thing they were doing before. But now they've said, okay, instead of saying that Jade name, right, that, Yesus name, instead of saying that whack authority that is half man, half Zeus, right, they're basically just doing the same thing they were doing before. They're just trying to use the actual name of the Most High, and they're still doing the same thing. So we have a microcosm here. Gandhi is a very interesting case study, a real person that we don't know the real about, right? And thank you for being part of the community. Wakanda, appreciate you. So So watch this. So what are we talking about with Gandhi? How is Gandhi all these different things? How is Gandhi all these different things that are going on, et cetera, et cetera? How is Gandhi romanticized? How is Gandhi forced? How is Gandhi put in all these positions where, um, he's hated and I'm sorry, he's loved, but persons don't realize who he is to the point to where when we were knocking down all these, or when persons were knocking down, because I wasn't part of it, I guess, but I can't. I'll admit to you in my flesh, and even in my spirit, why not? Admit it that hey, I enjoyed seeing statues being pulled down here and there. That being said, while y'all were pulling down those statues, during the same time, they were pulling down Gandhi statues in Africa, right? A lot of persons don't know what's going on because a lot of times we don't focus on anything outside of what kind of what affects us, affects our demeanor, affects our town, affects our situation only, forgetting about the what we call the butterfly effect, right? But they were tearing down Gandhi statues during that time. Now that means that for us, oppression, one of the biggest ways that we could deal with some of the oppression we had was to tear down the Stonewall Jackson statues, the Robert E. Lee statues, all these persons that were slave owners that we give a pass and their statues, etc. But over in Africa, they said, when we look at oppression, we look at Gandhi. That's an interesting dynamic for a lot of us, probably, right? Is that for us, pulling the statues we were looking for, right? Low hanging fruit, Confederacy, white persons. Okay, once we get rid of these statues, we'll be fine, whatever. But they were pulling down his statues, especially in Ghana, in university. They would pull down his statue and they would say, we pulled down his statue because his statue represents somebody who hated us, who had us hate ourselves, and there's no way that we would have him as at a fixture at a place where we teach ourselves about ourselves. How you doing, brother Darius? Shabbat shalom to everybody coming in, right? So he literally so when it comes to Gandhi, Gandhi is a very interesting case study because while everybody smiles about Gandhi, nobody wants to tell the truth. For example, before we go into the racism piece, because persons think that I'm just a reverse racist sometimes, let's just look at some of the stuff as far as Gandhi and even how you can have somebody who's literally called Mahatma. If you don't know what Mahatma means, Mahatma Gandhi, they're calling him Great Father, I believe. I could be off a little bit on the translation. Somebody, if you want to double check it. But I believe Mahatma Gandhi basically is saying Great Father. He's Mahatma Gandhi, right? Gandhi G is a play on him being a family figure, almost like saying, "Hey, what's up, Dad?" or "What's up, Unc?" Right? So he's named as being a familiar figure. But one thing that persons don't talk about is his wife. Now, it's interesting if you've seen the movie, right? The movie I'm talking about before, at Ben Kingsley. And how you doing, Andrew? The movie with Ben Kingsley that came out. His wife was alive at the end of the movie. You may or may not know about Great Soul. Okay, sorry, Great Soul. Great Soul. Excuse me. But he's a father figure to all, right? Excuse me. Thank you. Great Soul. Okay. So Great Soul. My stuff with my information was wrong. Mahatma means Great Soul. So let's even just deal with it in that. Even though he's kind of thought of to be a father figure, but let's just deal with Great Soul. This Great Soul with his wife in the movie, if you watch the movie, you'll discover his wife is alive at the end. But that's a lie. His wife died, right? Before he did. I don't know if it's decades, but it's definitely years before he did. Now, the reason that she died is because this great soul had a religious belief, so-called religious belief. We're just going to use this word in the way that we normally do. His wife had a so-called, and both of them had a so-called religious belief that they believed not so much that you couldn't use herbs or medicine, but they didn't want to use what we today would focus on as like chemicalized medicine, or especially for them, medicine of the West. Right? It was the medicine of the West that went against their thought process, their religion, etc. So we thought. So Mahatma's wife got sick, and all she needed was some penicillin. Right? They didn't believe that she should have the penicillin. So she ended up passing away. They were strong in their beliefs. The country felt sad for him, was behind him, all the stuff that happened. Right? How you doing, Robert? Thanks for being on. Right? All these things that happened. Then, right? What happened after that was Gandhi got sick. I believe if it wasn't the same exact thing, it was something very extremely similar to what his wife had. And guess what he needed to survive? He needed penicillin. What did Gandhi decide to do? You think he did the same thing that his wife needed to do? As a great soul? Or do you think that he lived? The answer is he took the penicillin. But in the movie, they won't even tell you that. Why? First of all, in the United States of America and Hollywood and Hollyweird, even with all the weird stuff they show you in the movie, supposedly you're supposed to have a happy ending. So this stuff is based off a true story. Remember, all this stuff is based off a true story. You got to be ready for them to lie a lot. But their goal is to send you home, right? Happy, supposedly. But, you know, Gandhi's going to die. You know, he's going to die, but they wanted his wife to be there. They had this so-called white woman that was supposed to be like an adopted daughter of his. And we don't even, going further into the great soul, you see that his wife dies off. A lot of persons don't know. Some persons will argue about this, whether it was many little girls or whether it was one little girl. Right? Signs show that more than likely it was more than one little girl. Right? In the movie, they just say he adopted some older white woman. But I don't know. It was a little girl who was his niece. So his family. You know, once again, microcosm. A lot of stuff that we see in the system happens over and over again. Like if something happens in the family and somebody's frustrated, somebody's mad, somebody's upset, whatever. You know, we can easily, you know, do whatever we need to do. As far, I'm sorry, where am I going? The little girl, the niece. Yeah, sorry. So somebody might be mad, frustrated, whatever. At the end of the day, we can see that if somebody's dealing with the niece, right, and saying that they have this one niece, they have this one person or whatever, usually the way this works in families is like this is predatory behavior. Most stuff that happens with little children that are SA, or anybody that's SA for that matter, it will usually be somebody that you know, somebody that you trust, somebody that you think you can be in their arms, somebody that you would trust your child with and let your child, you know, get a shower around, let your child go to here with, there with, or whatever, right? It's usually going to happen in-house. That's one of the reasons why I don't like this whole saying what happens in this house stays in this house, because a lot of times persons are defending very lewd, crude, and disgusting behavior, right? Well, Gandhi had a little niece. And Gandhi's niece, right, it was other women too, but let's just say allegedly. We know this one for certain. You can't deny this one because he doesn't deny this one. He tells you why he did it. He had a little niece that he would have sleep buck naked with him. Yeah, naked with him. How you doing, Brother Hassab? How you doing, Freedom? Right? So he had this niece that he would allow to sleep with him naked. Right? And so the niece slept right next to him naked. And when asked about this, he said, oh, I'm doing this because it's the only way. That's what he said. It's the only way for him to truly be tempted and to make sure that he can get past being tempted so he does not fall into temptation. Now, this happens with many leaders, by the way. We be honest. Let's just keep it about. They always got an excuse. Jamal Bryant, what's your excuse for offering your children and not being faithful to your wife? He gives a weird sermon talking about he's the man and how David did a lot of bad things, but David was still on the throne. And if David could be on the throne, then he can go ahead and still be pastor. The pastor of the group in Baltimore, the place that he built, got famous on, and then said, oh yeah, once Baltimore stopped messing with him, he said, peace, I'm gonna go ahead and go to the place where Bishop, what's his face was, in Georgia, you know, the same bishop who was messing with little boys. And now he's talking about LGBTQ plus, and he's wilding out sexually, and he's telling women they should get the A word that rhymes with extortion because he was giving all over the city, he was getting women pregnant, and he was giving them A words, or, you know, paying them. And when some of them stopped getting them, and his wife came out and said, not only are you have all these women, or his ex-wife at that point, but you won't pay child support for your children, all of a sudden, he gave this whack sermon, right? But we see persons do stuff like this all the time, where they're messing around, or they're messing around sexually, or different things like that. With him, this is something where, once again, nobody wants to say anything because you place him at this high point, but you don't want to realize that he was actually doing a lot of wickedness. See, that's even before we get to the racism, right? But once again, what happens in society is that somebody says, why are you talking about racism? Why are you talking about the bad in person? Why are you talking about what happened before? Just focus on where we're going. Why are you talking about where we came from? Well, because where we're going is based off of where we came from. You know, they tell you that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he was somebody who looked at what Gandhi did and followed it, even though the only reason he followed it is because the SCLC or whatever it's called, when they made him the leader of it, they said you have to be nonviolent. Why? Because the guy that came before Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was somebody who wasn't necessarily talking about let's off everybody, but he was saying, hey, we got to protect ourselves and be better. He was a preacher. They said we can't have that or whatever because that's not what we want, and we don't think that'll get us what we want. We need to be more submissive. And so they got Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who he himself didn't even believe in it at first, but said, okay, I guess I got to study this stuff if that's what you guys are talking about. And if you don't know this, he not only walked around with a pistol, right, but he also had deacons, right? I forget what they were called, but he had deacons that were specifically going around with them, making sure that if you try to mess with them, they fire off on you. They weren't at every event, but he had them, right? But we have this mindset that Gandhi, you know, Gandhi gets this place to where he affected everybody positively. And no, he wasn't doing things for everybody. Now let's get to some of the stuff we're talking about with the microcosms, because some of this shows us where we are. First of all, I don't even just want to talk about Gandhi going after so-called black persons, but I want to talk about this thing of color that existed before we even get to the India piece. Because Gandhi became famous in South Africa, apartheid, South Africa. And Gandhi was upset at so-called white persons, right, Dutch persons in South Africa, not because, right, Gandhi was upset at persons in South Africa, not because these persons in South Africa, Gandhi was upset at these persons in South Africa, not because they were bad towards black people or people of color. He was upset that persons in South Africa would not treat him and his family better than they treated black folk. He writes articles. This is stuff you can look up yourself. You can read for yourself. He writes articles, right? Making the point to say in these articles, hey, I need y'all to know. Like, hear what I'm saying? He writes articles. And he says, I need you guys to know, I need you guys to be aware of some things. In these articles, what does he write? In these articles, he writes stuff like, hey, I need you guys to be aware that, hey, you remember the Greeks and the Indian persons, we're the same. Remember Alexander the Great's empire? And a lot of you might not know this, but he's making a historical reference there, so-called historical reference. He's making a reference there, though, talking about how the last part of Alexander the Great's army, which was actually part Mongol as well and part Indian, so it's actually a mixture of a lot of stuff. But he, right, so going back to Genghis Khan's family sitting on the throne and Alexander the Great's family. But anyways, he makes it a point to say, hey, you guys know the last Greek part of the Greek Empire, part of that four-headed leopard, part of the four generals that took over for Alexander the Great, the last part to die off and not be under Greek control, died off in India. Now, this is a little bit of fudging with history, but he's not that far off. But what he was trying to say is that we Indians are the same as you white folk. Why would you treat us the way that you do these black folk? But here's the deal. Even before we talk about South Africa, we got to be honest about India at the time. India and Pakistan, they be all one at this point. We have to have an honest dialogue, because what's going on here is that we don't talk about this thing called sect, S-E-C-T, right? And there are different sects, S-E-C-T-S, right? And there were 4 sects, right? I don't remember, I'm not going to order, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and they were basically like, you know, you had the Brahm and the this and that and all whatever, and you had some that were priests, some that were warriors, some that were this, the poor, etc. And you also had it where it started, because of family and persons getting married and stuff, it started to be developed around color. This is before they even become colonized by the English, right? Naturally, if you're having so-called, you know, if you're having sex, let's just be adult about it. If you're having sex with different persons or whatever, and all the persons are about the same, you start looking the same, right? And if you're not going to have relations with anybody else, then you're going to start having it to where everybody's going to eventually start looking like each other, right? So what happens is you had something that happened where light-skinned persons, the lighter skin, because we won't call them so-called white, even my social construct, but lighter-skinned persons were being put up top, and then the next level was the second was a little darker, and a shade darker came down, and then there was the darkest at the bottom. But then you even had these persons that were called Dalits, right? If you do some research, you'll discover they are called untouchables. And they are still very much so mistreated. Today, their women are still ripped apart. They're African persons, for real, all of them are. But these persons really are African persons, even though they're of the same family, believe it or not, as Buddha, right? But while some in India would celebrate and listen to and maybe even worship Buddha, the people that Buddha comes from, they could not ever see themselves being in the same level, right? So you have this thing already going on there, and then it's enhanced once missionaries and once persons who are emissaries and magistrates and all this stuff from England come over, and eventually once England starts to colonize, it's one of the ways, just like when in Africa persons don't consider themselves to be humans and to be the same and to be this, so it's easy to get them to fight against each other and sell each other out and all these different things. Well, same thing in India. It's easy to come through there and take all these different groups and make sure that you have them continue to fight against each other. And not only that, hey, you got this fifth group, untouchables, man, we got this group called slaves, shadow slaves, right? you know, they easily took it and manifested it and make it a lot worse than what it already was. So here it is, right? How you doing, Daniel? So here it is where now Gandhi is raised in an Indian household in an apartheid state. The Dutch are on top. The Indians are supposed to be better. At least they see themselves as being better because where they come from, hey, black people are already on the bottom. So when you see in one of the things that you won't see in the movie, of course, and one of the things you won't see talked about, of course, but the reality is that Gandhi, when he's making those speeches and he's talking about, Indians being free and I'm a free Indian and we're going to be nonviolent and da da, while saying they should be nonviolent towards so-called white persons, so-called black persons, he says they should be ripped out of their homes. He says they should be beat in the streets. He said they shouldn't have the same rights. Matter of fact, when it came to Jewish person, a lot of persons don't know this about Gandhi. This is later on when he leaves South Africa and goes to India again, right, and lives the rest of his life in India. A lot of you guys don't know that Gandhi supported Hitler. That's one of the reasons he was kind of sort of liked by white persons. You might not have heard that before. He actually supported Hitler. Not like I can see where Hitler's coming from. No, he said, like, for example, when they found out what they were doing to Jewish persons, this was before he decided to change because they weren't quite getting the press that they wanted. So they had to tell him, you kind of going a little too strong with this white anti anybody that's not white or anti anybody that's not in the sect that you consider yourself to be. So he eventually started at least not saying out loud what he was thinking, but he was a Hitler supporter to the point to where he's actually, you can read the stuff for yourself, you can find it for yourself. He actually tells persons that what everybody said about Hitler, he was like, Hitler's not that bad. And this is what he meant. He goes further. He said, those Ashkenazi, those Jewish persons that we found in concentration camps and they were committing genocide. He said, for real, all those ditches and everything you found them in, he said those Ashkenazi persons should have just thrown themselves in. No cap. That's not what I believe. That's what he said. He said those cats that you see should have just thrown themselves in. Hitler was a black man is very, very strong. That's not even kind of close, right? Especially if we're talking about, I know what people mean by black, white, and everything nowadays, but that's kind of a little crazy. That being said, Hitler was Jewish, right? He offered some of his Jewish family members, right? So we gotta be careful. I won't even go deep into that because I don't know where to even start with that dialogue, what you're reading, who said what, et cetera, et cetera. But he said that, hey, all of them Gandhi said all of them should just jump in the ditch. Right? Gandhi hated quite a bit of persons. He hated his wife. And because he was cheating and messing around with little girls and stuff, when his wife could go ahead and die on, he said, hey, we don't believe in penicillin. But when it was his turn to keep on staying around so he could have all his power and do all this stuff with little girls, he said penicillin is the key to life. Right? I'm just saying, we have somebody, and this person is instituted in. This person is grafted into their society and is so ubiquitous in life that persons believe that this is a person of peace, not realizing that he is an agent of chaos. And we deal with this quite a bit, to where we have a lot of Gandhis. We got a lot of persons that when you start looking at their life, you start saying, wait a minute, right? Wait a minute now. Not stuff that's said. Look, there's a lot of persons where there's a lot of alleged stuff. You know, there's people that allege stuff about Malcolm X still to this day, and it's not even true. If you do just a little bit of research, you'll find out that it's not. Right? There's persons that say stuff about Marcus Garvey. If you do a little bit of research, you'll find that it's not. There's persons to this day that still say stuff about Dr. Amos Wilson and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and others who have passed away and now are our ancestors. You know, that they say. There's persons that even say stuff about Abraham that's not even true. You know, Abraham was married to his sister. No, he wasn't. Now, that's because of Abraham's lie. With that being said, there are persons that still say stuff that's bad about that. There's persons that say, oh, yeah, the Bible supports slavery, even though they don't admit that somebody put the word slave in there, and it's talking about indentured servitude. And, yeah, you know, there are some things that to you would be harsh as far as, yeah, Yah said, if you're gonna go against that country, I don't want you to keep anything, anybody, everybody there must go. Yeah, there are times that Yah said that for sure. But this whole thing as far as slavery and all this stuff, there's literally laws in the books to protect us from that. But somebody mentioning something is one thing, but when we know Gandhi himself has spoken on it and told you why he thought it was acceptable, we got to have conversation. And we're not going to do this weird thing with him that we keep trying to do with persons today, where it's like, oh, well, it was the times. You know, like Patreon family, SOC University family, we've been talking about. Jefferson Bible recently a lot, right? And person tried to go with Jefferson. You know, it was the times that he was in. He really had no clue. You know, no, time out. You're not going to tell me that he made a Jefferson Bible, which is another version of the slave Bible, in which he took the pieces out of the Bible he wanted to and put them together, and what he said was the order they should go through, right? And Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then he did this and took out, on purpose, took out miracles, and took out all types of things to where he thought it wasn't moral enough so that we would actually know Christ for who he is. See, this is the constant changing of the word that we got to be aware. This is the constant changing of the word. This is the constant changing of what's going on, right? That's that abomination piece we were talking about last night in Malachi chapter 2, verses 10 through 13, I believe we did last night, right? Where it's an abomination, where we're giving that moldy bread, that, right? We made the altars contemptible. We made it to where persons don't want to come worship. And, right, we made it to where we keep trying to give Yah leftovers, right? God, we give Yah, like we offer up to persons Gandhi as if he's some kind of moral compass. Immortal Technique. I mess with Immortal Technique. Yeah, great MC. Right, and does a lot for the community too. He said it's easier to pay people a hardly livable wage than to actually enslave people. Well, that's part of why capitalism won out, right? Like the Civil War was about capitalism. Capitalism versus chattel slavery, right? It's easier to have everybody be indentured servants right on the cusp of slavery, or basically be so indentured that they really live as slaves, than to actually allow persons to realize what it is to be free and to give everybody the freedom of really living off the land and living off each other. If you live off each other, then you're free. But Gandhi was somebody who literally helped to make sure that his country was torn in half, right? Or torn in thirds, you know, but I guess torn in half if you're saying it's just two countries. Gandhi helped to ensure that sexual perversion was not only continued, but was hidden. Gandhi allowed for men to continue to treat their wives, however, to the point of letting them die, even though their religious beliefs said that they should protect them. Right? Gandhi is a token. He's not held in high esteem as much as you guys think. He's not really held in high esteem all over India and all over Pakistan. And thanks for being part of it. Is it David Dawkins? Thank you for being on. Right? So we praise Yah, Akudebada, right? So you have to realize, you know, that we're going through a very similar thing, and there's a lot of persons who are dealing with modern Gandhis and can't and have so much propaganda that they can't see past it, right? A Charleston White does a lot of damage in our communities. Charleston White, who supposedly wanted to do the right thing. He was wearing the bow tie. Y'all wouldn't listen to him, and now he plays a character. No, Charleston White is somebody who comes out and tells you how he R's women and how he slapped and how black folks shouldn't do anything, and how all black people should be forced to go to boot camp for a certain amount of years, or should be forced to go to prison for a certain amount of years. And then they would understand the system, and then they would be ready, and then they would be productive citizens. This is somebody that a lot of young cats, and a lot of red pill cats, and a lot of white persons are now using to be able to say, see, this is what's going on. And after a while, what happens is it'll be whitewashed. Charleston White is a great person. Charleston White is somebody that tears us down, right? Like a Gloria Steinem that comes in, I'm trying to help all women. Feminism was created by the CIA. She was a CIA operative, and she went into the black community, and she hired, or really taught and got in the mind and then paid CIA money to black women, young teenage girls, to make sure that they started writing books as teenage girls to tell you how all men should be seen, especially black men, and how black men contribute to the patriarchy more than so-called white men. This is a microcosm. This is the same person. This is the same Antichrist spirit we talked about. The same kind of second beast that uses some kind of religious movement to be able to help and uplift not only the beast, the government, but also the Satan. Really has more power than the government within themselves could ever have. Right? But we have all these religious figures and stuff, and we don't think about so-called religious figures, and we don't think about what's really going on. See, Donald Trump, when you realize Donald Trump is simply a religious figure who's a big leader in the religion of racism, white supremacy. How you doing, Count It All Joy? And Shabbat Shalom to everybody, and peace to you. I kind of got the sun in my eyes. I'm not catching everybody's stuff as much, but I thank you for being on today. How you doing, Coco? Thanks for being part of the community. Right? How you doing, Hebrew Enrichment? So if you, and was it Robert? I think I said Robert Decker earlier, right? So if you go through the process and you do this, you'll see that Gandhi, right? You'll see that Gandhiji, right? Etc. Mahatma, great soul, Gandhi, right? The father of the nation, so to speak. He is a microcosm. There's a lot of persons that come through and really are doing nothing more than continuing the process of the same thing, right? And racism, remember, Gandhi is not a so-called white person. He's actually more closer to what you would call an African, if not outright an African, but he would never call himself that, right? So this isn't as simple. See, I'm trying to get you to see. And remember, we just talked about within themselves, before England even got involved, they already had the 4 different groups based off of color. And we forget that Greeks, who, by the way, the further you go back into their story, the darker they get. Don't forget that King Leonidas, I know what he looked like on screen, but King Leonidas, he was dark and he had locks. Don't forget Alexander the Great's father, right, was considered to be Spartan. So, like, even back then, they still would say, what though? Blue eyes, blonde hair. Why? Because what they were saying is the persons that sit on the throne, we want these persons to be of a particular family. We want to keep everything in-house. So if, oh, king live forever, it means that our lineage lives forever. And we need to tell everybody, not only do we deserve to live forever just because we made it here, we fought our way in, the gods have chosen us. The deities have chosen us. So if the deity has chosen us, then we must make sure that we take time out to ensure that everybody recognizes and comprehends and understands, that everything about us is chosen, including our hair, our skin color, all this stuff, etc. This is where this comes from. Way, thousands of years before Adolf. We're already seeing this stuff take place. Because it's technically family lineage, as we talked about with the Bible. It's about family lineage. It's about what? It's about family lineage. You said the Jefferson Bible also wasn't given to slaves to put them down. I didn't say that the Jefferson Bible was sent. I said the Jefferson Bible is a form of slave Bible. All right? You know about what the slave Bible is? Or really what it refers to, because there's many different versions of the slave Bible, for real. But do you know what the slave Bible is? Right? If you go Washington, D.C., Bible Museum, look it up, right? Go do some research. What is the slave Bible? Slave Bible is all these overseers. Remember, even the term overseer is not a biblical term. It's a term that was used by persons who owned slaves. And you had churches. Sometimes churches would allow the slaves to be up in the peanut gallery, right? We were the peanuts in the gallery, and everybody else would be down. Right now, you pay extra money to be where we were, but back then, the slaves were in the peanut gallery, and you might be down. But a lot of time, or you had a slave section, but whatever. But most of the time the churches were separated. They still wanted the slaves to be indoctrinated with their version of, well, with Christianity. They wanted them to be indoctrinated with it and all this stuff and etc. So what would happen? You'd have a service, and you know those big chairs that they have, and sometimes you have a big chair that's there but it's empty and nobody's in it, or the pastor sits in the chair or whatever. Well, that was the chair of the overseer. The overseer was sitting in the big chair, and he was supposed to listen to the pastor. Now, the pastor was given a slave Bible, which is a Bible that basically had a lot of stuff ripped out of it. They would not know the story of Exodus. They would not know a lot of stuff that had to do with, the Apostle Paul. And even those words, slaves, that they're writing in there, they still were too close to home as far as, hey, the treatment of even the so-called slaves, which that wasn't the original words they used, but the so-called slaves that were in there, those words, they were still supposed to be treated like human beings, which means that obviously they were more indentured servants, and you should still treat them correctly. Or if they were your disciples, the word master means teacher. So the teachers of the disciples should treat them with respect. They didn't like that, so they would rip those pages out. And when we do our research, we discover somebody like Nat Turner didn't become against the Bible, and that's why he stood out. No, he was a pastor, right, who was taught by them how to read, write, etc., and was supposed to keep up the slave mentality. He was a house Negro that basically was supposed to keep everybody in line. All of a sudden, Nat Turner gets his hands on an actual Bible and reads about Moses for the first time. And he says, oh, I'm supposed to be Moses, right? So persons learning about the truth scares those who are in charge in chattel slavery and racism and white supremacy. Knowing the entire Bible, the more we learn about the Bible, the more we realize, oh, okay, nobody's supposed to be enslaved like this. Toussaint Louverture, right? He was out. He was not even living in Haiti. He hears what's going on in this country as far as the fight that's going on. He decides to go back because he reads the Bible. He reads about Moses. He says, oh, that's we need to get free. Harriet Tubman, right, is the black Moses for us, right? Need to get free. So a lot of persons forget that a lot of what happened was when persons knew what the Bible said. So what do? You make sure that you do your best to continue to erase as much. You have them read the parts that make it that racism, white supremacy, what they built, and how they rebuilt Christ in their image, to have a different conversation regarding that. Right? They'll make sure to keep that stuff in line, but the stuff that actually says, well, wait a minute, what did Israelites look like? What did Christ look like? This and that gets ripped out, to the point to where a lot of persons may not know this, but like Willie Lynch said, when you teach persons to do it, they'll start doing it and policing themselves. A lot of persons forget that. They'll say it's because they were so afraid of it, but a lot of persons, a lot of black folk used to rip, even, I don't know if they still do it in the 21st century, but in the 19th century, even, I say definitely to the 1980s or so, it was not uncommon for black folk to be ripping Revelation out of their Bible, or just never read it, because why would you read it? It's so scary for everybody, and really it's not. It's called revelation. If you're doing what you're supposed to do, you revel. The word revel means to rejoice, right? So when you say there's no slave Bible, once again, you're saying, oh, he didn't use it to control the slaves. Jefferson used quite a bit of things to control the slaves, including his own wang. Forgive me, but whatever, right? He used a lot of stuff. He dropped that so-called good white blood in a whole bunch of other persons, not just Sally Hemings. And still enslaved Sally Hemings. Sally Hemings died a slave. She never was free. So it wasn't like he was sitting up there, that was his wife, who he was sleeping around with slaves and with other persons, but the slaves were the easiest to get to. While he was writing simultaneously how he hated slaves, and how they were smelly, and how they were unattractive, and how they were stupid, and how nobody could ever and nobody could ever find any attraction to them yet. Yeah. You see? So I'm just saying, it's kind of a continuation. Gandhi is the same thing. You put somebody in there, and Gandhi was taught. Now you have to recognize, Gandhi was taught this, right? Somebody had to teach him this, his family dynamic, Indian raising. I'm not saying all Indians are like this, I'm not saying all Pakistani, I'm just telling you the truth, right? That all these things, you put this stuff together, and then you get somebody on the outside who's trying to make sure that they conquer you. Now, now watch this. What's the only reason why India gets free? And we're coming up on 9:30, so like I said, I got to get ready to pack the car and then be in place so that we can start the podcast on time. Well, real quick, what's one of the reasons why India is freed? How you doing, Mo Design? What's one of the reasons why India is freed? Everybody just goes, oh, because Gandhi was, no. India is free the same reason why Israel was created. Now, I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about the modern Israeli state. They were created the same reason. Something's happening at that time. What's happening at the time of India becoming free, Pakistan becoming a nation for the first time, becoming free? Uh, what's happening with Israel is becoming free? World War II is ending. And who is over India? And who was over India? Who was over Pakistan? Who was over uh, um, Israel? Well, the Rothschilds helped to pay for Israel, and they were making money off the stuff for sure, right? So we can definitely throw them in there. That's a great catch, right? Right. But who else? The British control. Thank you. They were under Great Britain. They were under England. England was losing money. England was trying to do what everybody else was, but they didn't have the finances to support it. If you guys recall, it was France, what you guys call the Allied powers, because they're supposed to be the heroes. The French, the Americans, the British, and the Russians were all fighting against the so-called Axis powers, which was Hitler, Japan, and Italy, right? And everybody was falling in line with one of those, right? That was what what at least the way it's addressed nowadays, right? That's the way we were taught. But we forget that France colonizers, but France ran out of money. France had basically been the roughest warriors to go against, but the French didn't care about trying to continue technology. They wanted to continue to be in some of the brutal stuff. They didn't see the point in getting into a whole bunch of the tank gun stuff that everybody else was till it was too late. So they kind of lost ground, and they were already broken up because they had lost money. They were able to hold on through apartheid to a lot of different countries and colonies that they had, and even got Haiti to pay them reparations for them losing to Haiti, right? And then eventually sold everything to the CIA. The CIA took over Haiti, which means America. That's why you see the Clintons in there with the Red Cross and all that nowadays, right? But the French were in there, but the French kind of lost out there. So basically, France is really broke. You know, if it's not for the African nations that still, for whatever reason, haven't decided, hey, we don't need to worry about y'all, we'll just do for ourselves, France would be done, right? So France is out of there, but they were trying to do the same thing, right? Russia kind of sort of had the money and the manpower, and so they kept on pressing as long as they could to go against America. That's why you still have the Russia versus America sentiment that still goes on today, right? But they couldn't keep up. But they tried their best to keep up with communism, to put it in different places. But ultimately, that was to kind of continue the World War II vibes, because we've never really stopped fighting. But Russia kind of fell off over time, right? A big sign of them not being as crucial as what they were was the falling of the Berlin Wall in the 80s, right? Okay. Then you get to, what was that? I'm sorry. Anyway, then we get to, and we got to finish up time wise. So then we get to the United States of America, who had the money, figured this stuff out. Really didn't have the money. That's why you trillions in debt. It started back then, but was able to continue to force this thing through, even though you were going through the so-called Great Depression. They kept on going through, finding ways to conquer. Became heavily militarized, and don't have territories. But I'm sorry, don't have colonies. They call them territories, but they're basically the same thing. All right, now. And French is going through somewhat of a revolution right now as we speak, for real, for real. Now, the last one we just talked about, England. England and America, right, are allies during the war. Winston Churchill, all this stuff. But they get to a place where they're losing money. They're hemorrhaging money. Their people are poor. Stuff is busted. All these colonies are falling apart. They have to start saying, okay, we can't do what everybody else, like we can't, like Russia's in a position where they start gobbling up all the countries, they become the USSR. America's gobbling up all these different places, they're calling them territories, and they're getting, Alaska, they're getting, they're getting Alaska, they're getting Hawaii, they're getting Puerto Rico, they're getting Guam, Philippines, keep on Guantanamo Bay, all this stuff. They're grabbing all this stuff and have the Navy, which is always the big thing. They've been doing that since the Great White Fleet. So they basically got all that together. So England is in a position to where we got to cut our losses, and if we're going to survive and still be some kind of world power, because England's really small, then we have to make sure that whatever we can control is what we can. If not, it's a fire sale, right? Just like when Louisiana Purchase was made, that was because Haiti won. And when Haiti won, Napoleon lost a bunch of money that was coming in. So he sold what is now known as, the Louisiana Purchase. He sold a whole big chunk of what you guys call the United States of America over. Okay, same kind of things going on where the war is over, England won, but they don't have the ability to keep fighting and moving with everybody else at the same level. So they got to do what they got to do. So they start selling stuff, and they sell India, right? India is controlled at that point by Pakistan, but they give, just like you see with all these corporations. A lot of you don't know Nigeria is a corporation. There's still the corporation that owned it before they sold Nigeria, right? A lot of you don't know, like when somebody sues, they sue for peace, right? It takes in capitalism, it takes money to get peace, right? So if you're a capitalist, you sue for peace, right? So there's money is always involved. It's capitalism. It's capital. There's something there's always a transaction, right? UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. There's always a transaction. It's commercial. It's the code is there for money. It's trade. So what you'll see is that now England is running out. So England didn't just give up India, right? Indians and CIA and others had to come together and buy it. So families that could afford India went ahead and got India, right? But Gandhi was the person that they did it under or whatever. But Gandhi, if you don't know this, the reason he lost his life was by somebody who was a man who was tired of hearing all the stuff about Gandhi, this, Gandhi, that. He saw what Gandhi was doing. He saw how he had been catching himself together. He saw now India was split up rather than becoming the people like they were supposed to, and he was disenfranchised. Now, I'm not saying Gandhi deserved to be stabbed or whatever. I'm just telling you that in his mind, that's what he thought. He went and he stabs him or whatever, he killed him, right? And unlike the movie, his wife wasn't there because she was already dead, as we said earlier, right? Same thing happens in Israel. Israel, if you don't know, the Rothschilds and other Israelites came together and paid for Israel, right? They paid for it. It was actually at that point, it wasn't even called Israel anymore, right? But this state was under British rule, right? And under this British rule, they were doing what they could, but they couldn't make any money. They weren't making enough money off of it. They were losing stuff. They were starting to have issues with their home country. So they sold Israel, right? And the Rothschilds family, with the help of the Ashkenazi state, came together and said, "We'll rename it and shape it." That's why that star is on it. That star, there's no such thing in the Bible as the Star of David. The only star that represents is the Star of Malak, right? Which is basically another word that they use for king, but there's the king that they worship back then was the king that Amos warned us about, and the king that Stephen was stoned when he preached about, right? That's where that star comes from. That's a Rothschild star. It's not the same color, but it used to be on the door. It used to be red, and then Rothschild family started banking stuff like that. Now, this is all alleged. What I said so far is absolutely true. The rest of this we can say is alleged. Allegedly, right? The Rothschild family are devil worshippers, allegedly. And allegedly, well, this isn't alleged. The Rothschild families are over the bank. So when you say the Bank of England, that's a Rothschild bank. When you say the Federal Reserve Bank, that's a Rothschild bank, right? They're not part. They call it Federal Reserve. They call it Bank of England. They call it the Bank of Spain, Bank of France, etc. Because they want you guys to think that those are actually part of the state, but the state has to get their money or get permission to even spend money through the Rothschilds, right? So when persons say this stuff is tied into Israel, there's actually a lot of sense in that, seeing how Israel doesn't exist unless it's with Rothschild money, blessing, and blessing of England. So, yeah. But anyways, we could go deeper into that, but we'll leave it today. Like I said, I don't want to be disobedient. I got to make sure we get on the road real quick. So thank you all for being on. I appreciate you. We honor you. We thank you so much for being on with us. We're thankful and grateful to have you on one more again. Everything is on for the rest of, so the rest of the day is going to be this. The rest of the day is going to be this. At the top of the hour, at at 10 a.m. New York time. I'll leave it up on TikTok just for a little bit for you guys to see. But at 10 a.m. New York time, we're going to have um, our podcast. So we'll be doing that at 10 a.m. New York time. If you want to join us live, you have to have the Podbean app. I'm putting the information on TikTok. So if you'd like to be able to come over to TikTok, feel free to go ahead and get the information or look it up right here in the should be in the description with the video if you're on YouTube. But you can go ahead and look at TikTok. I'm putting it up now. You have to have the Podbean app, Podbean, the Podbean app, and then look for my name, the Kofi Ofori Podcast, the Kofi Ofori Podcast, KOFIOFORI, the Kofi Ofori Podcast. And if you want to join us live, you got to have the Podbean app for that. We'll be starting at 10 a.m. New York time. We will have Shabbat school for the babies at 11 a.m. New York time. And we'll make sure we have that. We've been sending the link out to everybody via text, so hopefully everybody's been getting it. Been sending it out to multiple numbers and everything as well. Persons that have been coming in new, we should be adding you guys in. If there's somebody who has a child, please forget there is one person who's new. I believe it's a sister, and she reached out. She asked for the link for the children. I did send the link. You missed on Saturday, or at least I didn't see you in time to give you the link on Saturday. So I did send you the link and said, hey, Saturday, this will be the same link, keep the same link. So if you see that text, please make sure that you use that. If not, try to text me before 11 a.m. New York time. We'll get you that information. The watch party that was supposed to be today is canceled. So no watch party today at 12:15 p.m. New York time. We're going to move that to next week. As I said, we just found out we got to get on the road, and we're going to be in the mountains by that time. So prayerfully for the children, you guys should have signal. We believe so. If not, we can pull over to the side of the road real quick for you guys and make sure you got the signal. But by the time it's time for the watch party, we'll be deep in the mountains. So probably won't have signal. So we'll move the watch party to next week. Also, those who are in England, that means, and I'll send you guys a message to remind you, but that means we won't be able to do your time, 7 p.m. London time. We'll be in the mountains, so we probably won't have time for that. That being said, though, the men's meeting, which is at 7 p.m. New York time, we should be at a place where we have signal by then. So men's meeting at 7 p.m. New York time is still on. So the schedule for the rest of the day is as follows, and then I'm gonna go ahead and take my leave. We'll leave it up for you guys to be able to see the information for the podcast and everything, and then I'm gonna start packing. I'm gonna start packing the vehicle. And thank you everybody for being on. Appreciate you. But yeah, so the schedule for today, top of the hour, 10 a.m. New York time podcast, 11 a.m. New York time Shabbat school, and then 7 p.m. New York time men's meeting. That's the schedule for today. All right. Tada, Mashabakhe, thank you so much. I hope you got something out of it. I appreciate you. We honor you. We honor your journey. We hope that you continue to do well. And we'll leave the stuff up on the screen for a little bit. You can listen to the animal sounds or whatever it is if you'd like to for a bit. But we're going to start getting ready for the trip. So, and I got to make sure that I'm in the vehicle in time. So when it's time to start the podcast, we can be started and everything. So love y'all. Thank you again. Honor you. We appreciate you. Hope you're doing well. We give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give our praise and honor to him with my wife, the Honorable Amma, who lives a life that's able to be honored. And as always, you can check her out. Check her out on TikTok, YouTube, website, and Pinterest. We also want you, as always, to remember that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearful and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shabbat Shalom. Also, Brother Jermaine, I'm going to see you soon as I end the feed. I'm going to send you a little something for my family and I for the shirts. Matter of fact, yeah, at least I might send you something at first for shirts for myself so I can get them from you for the Feast of Tabernacles and I can show them all. And then after that, then we'll go ahead and I'll get some more for the family or whatever, okay? And when you guys see the shirts, if you like them or whatever, then you can go ahead, go to Jermaine Insurance, JERMAINE, INSURANCE, JermaineInsurance@gmail.com, and get some of these ransom designs that he be putting out here. Thank you so much. Tadah, Mashabakhe. We appreciate you. We thank you. We honor you. And we'll talk with you guys soon. All right. Shabbat Shalom. Take care. Thank you for being on again. Peace.